Hello friends, today I'm going to read a story to you about spring. Before we read the story, I'm going to ask you to think about spring. I'd like for you to close your eyes and picture a spring day. What do you notice? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Now, I'd like for you to open your eyes and say what you were thinking about. Those are all great answers. Now, let's read the story. Fletcher and the Springtime Blossoms by Julia Rawlinson, illustrated by Tiffany Beek. What do you notice about the front cover? Also, before we read, what do you think the story is going to be about? Do you think it's going to be nonfiction? Fiction? Do you think the story is going to be about this box or the butterflies? Do you think the story is going to be about the flowers? Or maybe even the blossoms? What do you notice about the front cover that can help us know what might happen in the story? Give you a few minutes to think about that. Go ahead and say your answers. Those are all great answers. Good job, guys. Fletcher loves everything about spring. Listening to the birds sing, smelling just open flowers, and playing chase with butterflies. But then Fletcher sees something he never expected to see in spring. Snow. Oh no! But it turns out that spring has another surprise in store for Fletcher, a warm and wondrous one. Jump into spring with Fletcher and friends. Fletcher and the Springtime Blossoms. The woods were full of the chirping, bustling, sing-song sounds of spring. Fletcher bounced along with his nose in the air, sniffing the just burst buds of flowers and playing chase with butterflies, with his head spinning with sights and sounds. He tumbled happily down the hill into the sunny orchard, but when he picked himself up from the ground, he couldn't believe his eyes. What do you notice about in this picture? For me, I think it's really pretty about all the flowers and butterflies. A soft breeze danced through the branches, carrying snowflakes. Snow so late in the spring, thought Fletcher. It will be too cold for the buds and butterflies. There's no time to lose. Do you guys think it's possible for there to be snow in the spring? Looking for someone to tell, he trotted back up the hill and passed a pair of birds cuckooing on a branch. "You've flown to your summer home too soon," Fletcher cried. "I've been down to the orchard, and there's more snow on the way." "Then we should fly back south," they called. "But first we must tell Porcupine. He's just come out of his bed of the leaves. He needs to snuggle back down or he'll freeze." Fletcher and the birds found Porcupine stretching and scratching. "There's snow on the way," panted Fletcher. "I saw it in the orchard. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south, and you must hide away." Why do you think that the animals have to hide or go south for whenever it's winter or snow on the ground? Got an answer? Go ahead and say it out loud. I agree. They have to because it's too cold, so they have to hide themselves away in burrows, or they have to fly south where it's warmer. Then I should crawl back into my bed, snuffled Porcupine sadly. But first we must tell Squirrel that he needs to hunt for food. He's eaten his winter store of nuts. He'll need to find some more. Fletcher, the birds, and Porcupine found Squirrel scampering after sunbeams. Snow is blowing in from the orchard, gasped Fletcher. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south. Poor Porcupine must go back to bed, and you must find some food. You're right. I've eaten my spring feast, and Squirrel, and all my stores are gone. But before I hunt for more, we need to tell the rabbits to munch as much grass as they can before the snow falls. Fletcher, the birds, Porcupine, and Squirrel hurried off again. The rabbits were rolling down the hill next to their burrow. "Stop playing," cried Fletcher. "There's snow blowing in from the orchard. It will be too cold for the butterflies. The birds will need to fly south. Poor Porcupine must go back to bed. Squirrel needs to find food, and you must munch more grass." "Before we eat," said the rabbits, staggering dizzily to their feet. How many bunnies do you see here? That's right, it was 3. "Let's go and play in the snow." So the rabbits hoppity-roly-poly plopped down the hill through the woods. They were chased by Squirrel, Porcupine, the birds, and a bounty full of importance fox, all the way to the orchard, where the ground was white with... What do you think the ground's going to be white with? Think about it. Give you a few seconds. Do you think it's going to be snow? Let's find out. Blossoms. Blossoms bopping in the branches. Blossoms blowing in the breeze. Blossoms blanketing the ground, and not a snowflake to be found. Have you guys ever seen any blossoms? Do they remind you of snow? "Those are blossoms, not snow, you foolish fox," the animals cried. Fletcher blinked and rubbed his eyes, feeling very silly. But then, what do you think is going to happen? Let's find out. The animals scooped up pawfuls and clawfuls of blossoms from the ground and covered him in a tickly shower of fluttering white petals. Fletcher and his friends ran and played between the trees until at last they all collapsed in a blossomy, soft white heap. Isn't that fun to play in some blossoms? Then the birds fluttered back to their branch with beakfuls of blossoms to line their nest. Porcupine snuffled off up the slope, his quills dotted with tiny white petals. Squirrel went chasing up and down trees after snow-white petals dancing in the breeze. And the rabbits bounced back up the hill with blossoms to brighten their burrows. But Fletcher just lay smiling in his soft bed of petals, watching the blossomy branches bobbing overhead. I don't know if you can notice, but this page right here has some cool little like texture with it. And that's the end. So I want to ask you a couple questions about the book. So, what could Fletcher have done to know that it wasn't snow? Think about it. Okay, go ahead and say your answers. I think one thing he could have done was touched it. Then he would have known that it wasn't cold and wet, that it was more of like a flower petal. And then, what are some things that all the animals did with the blossoms? Think about it. Okay, what did the birds do? with the blossoms? They took beakfuls of blossoms to their nest. Why do you think they would do that? That's right, to help build their nest. What did the porcupine do with the blossoms? He snuffled off up the slope, his quills dotted with tiny white petals, so he just took a few back. What did squirrel do with them? He danced up the tree. And what did rabbits do? They took it back to decorate their burrows. That's correct. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you guys are enjoying your springtime.